Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
WESN.
Pleasant good morning to you. It's sometimes very strange to see the usual greetings, because I think we've all maybe seen a TV show or felt personally that sense of irony when you say good morning, but in the back of your mind you either already had experiences that make it difficult for the morning to be considered anything but good, or you are potentially anticipating something you know is going to happen that day. Now, as someone who, of course, has to follow current events, both at home and abroad, I guess you can say the phrase good morning right now, in more ways than one, could be a bit ironic, maybe a bit inaccurate, depending on your point of view, your perspective, and the context of why you're saying it. It might even come across as a little hypocritical. Right now, I guess one of the things that I want to challenge every viewer with, everyone who might see a clip of what I'm about to say, perhaps throughout the show, is think about how much we take for granted and how much we assume, how often we assume everything will work out. The fact is and we've said it before in various ways, we're a bit laissez-faire, we're a bit hands-off, we're a bit playful. We're not always serious about important things when we need to be serious about them. We don't know how to appropriately ratchet up the seriousness when necessary so that we could enjoy a general laissez-faire, relaxed attitude. We allow that relaxation to turn into complacency all too often. I bring this up because there's a situation which I don't necessarily fully understand exactly how and why it happened, but it has happened, where a woman was reportedly held against her will, and at least in one part of the report, it was said that her husband said repeated attempts to obtain police assistance were unsuccessful. And seemingly it was only because an NGO sounded the alarm, maybe, I don't know exactly what they did that was extra, but it got the attention of the commissioner, who apparently then conducted an operation which did not find the gentleman's wife. Apparently, the people who were holding her against her will for some strange reason, reportedly, I say some strange reason because I don't know what the motivation is. Apparently, they brought her to the Barrackpore police station. And apparently, she was reported to have broken free from their clutches. And I guess they say sought assistance, but perhaps the assumption would be she broke free and requested essentially asylum, protection. Apparently her sons, when tried to visit her, they were threatened with death. She was threatened with death. They were beaten. Now, I believe the NGO is calling for yes, the vice president of Red Cross is calling for protection for the family. This whole thing, I'm not entirely sure if it was a months-long ordeal or years-long ordeal, right? Because it was said she was held in captivity and abused for months, and the nature of the crime, there's a part of me that wonders, for the perpetrators, exactly how did you think you were going to get away with this? The only thing that makes sense, if they are literally extremely stupid or extremely cruel, because they would have to be extremely cruel, they would never be able to let her go free. They would have to double down every step of the way and keep her in some form of sick captivity if they didn't want to get caught and get into trouble. And if somehow they thought that they could have kept her alive, kept her working for them for no pay as a slave in perpetuity, and, you know, and kept it at some whatever they thought was a reasonable level, I mean, at some point, something would have come out to the public, right? And they probably would have gotten in trouble. It's just one of those things where when you look at it as a crime, it doesn't make sense. Because it's just so easy for the situation to fall apart. And I think maybe that's, ironically, one of the ways that allowed it to persist for as long as it did. Because I would imagine no one would think anyone would have the audacity to do something like this. And the fact that it was at the minimum months long, months long. Now, according to the husband, she left home in 2019 to visit her mother. This is his wife. She was allegedly offered work as a domestic helper. So I assume she only took up the offer within the last few months. She never came back home. They locked her up and kept her there to work. They never paid her and threatened to kill her. She tried to leave. Now, I don't know what this is. I don't know if this is some kind of domestic cultural thing that is practiced in the far corners of isolated country villages that doesn't really, it's not really widespread, right? I don't know if it's some very old, based off of some sort of very old traditions that were twisted over time. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's just one household, family, whatever, just had a really bad idea. Because again, it just, unless they were going to be extraordinarily cruel to this woman, you don't see how they were going to get away with it. But the fact of the matter is, apparently for months they did. They did, and it wasn't as though the situation was that well hidden. The family had concerns. The husband apparently went to the police. What did not happen? Why did it not happen? And this is not just an issue with the police, I would argue. As much as you would want it to end there. No, because this is one of those things where my thoughts when reading this is, how did our society allow this to happen? It's one thing if she was being kept from her family and they were told nothing and they suspected something was bad, but they had no indication. There apparently were videos circulated online of beatings. Disturbing videos of alleged abuse circulated in penal community chat groups showing the woman being assaulted. Despite the footage, her husband says repeated attempts to obtain police assistance was unsuccessful. What about this situation that apparently caused wider society, as much as it was circulated allegedly, right? Apparently, reportedly, it was circulated. That means people might have been upset about it. But it almost seemed as though everyone kind of decided to turn a blind eye, thinking, oh, well, it's just a domestic thing, and I don't want to get involved. So I don't, is it that people, what, was the accusations baseless? Did people not want to do their job? Was he getting run around because you had lazy fools? And fools is not the word I want to say about the individual police who may have turned them away. But I would argue again, it's not just them. I would argue that whatever the perception was on this situation is a consequence in part of our society, is a consequence in part of our relaxed attitude, is a consequence in part of how we want to face situations and assume the best and pretend that, I guess, that we're surprised when it doesn't all magically work out like a fairy tale with a fairy godmother sprinkling fairy dust over the situation to cure it of all its ills magically, because how dare anybody in this country think that we should be responsible for ourselves? Because there's also a situation with regards to one account of what happened at the whole jet ski incident at Pigeon Point, right? This is a quote in one of the daily newspapers. There appeared to be a lack of adequate emergency preparedness. Lifeguards seemed overwhelmed and not fully equipped to handle a trauma of this magnitude, because it doesn't happen, so why would we be prepared? And that's not necessarily lifeguards' fault, huh? Again, there was no visible access to basic emergency or medical equipment, because we're not accustomed to these sorts of things happening without fully understanding what the meaning of emergency equipment is. If you have an emergency every week, that's not when you need emergency equipment. That's when you need a review of your policies. You need the emergency equipment for when you have an emergency unexpectedly. It could be once every 10 years. That's the point. You don't know when an emergency like this is going to happen. You have to be prepared in case, not only if it is a regular experience. Even a doctor present on the beach was limited in providing assistance due to the absence of supplies. And you would think this is not some random park, you know, with like one swing and a slide and wood chips or sand on the ground. And it's like, yeah, use it at your own risk. This is a beach. This is not just a beach. This is a public beach. This is not just a public beach. This is a public beach with beach facilities operated by the government, with a significant amount of traffic, with a significant amount of businesses operating the area. And also, you have things like boats and watercraft and the like operating the area. I don't know. It's not as though nothing bad has never happened on the water before. You could have emergencies in pools, much less in the sea. And it's not as though we've never had an incident with watercraft and swimmers before. So this report is in the Express, right? The ambulance apparently took 40 minutes to respond. Police officers arrived ahead of the ambulance. Quote, as a father, a concerned citizen, and a regular visitor to this facility, I am deeply troubled by what I witnessed. This raises serious questions about the policies and safety measures implemented by the Tobago House of Assembly. But I will go a step further and say, similar to what I said previously, it's not just about the police, it's not just about the THA. What about our society that is fine with this level of complacency? And let's not get it twisted. There are a lot of jurisdictions around the world, a lot of major cities and school districts and the like in North America, in the United States alone, where they only learn lessons the hard way, just like us. But on some level, dare I say, we don't even learn the lessons. They don't always either. But we're a small country. It shouldn't be that hard to do things like emergency services and emergency care seriously. Because one of the things that I always wondered about and had no clear answer to, exactly who provides ambulance services, not for private transport of patients and the like, but for critical emergency situations, right? Who provides those ambulance services to respond to emergencies, medical emergencies? Because dare I say, even the police know, well, we have to put, if any of their guys are injured, they have to put them in the back of a police car and take them to a hospital, apparently. This is supposed to be a situation where the advice is not to put your relative or friend who has an emergency and you can't drive to the hospital. That's what it's supposed to be, right? It's supposed to be call an ambulance, let the ambulance come in, both for first aid, but also it will be safer and faster to use the ambulance than your own private car. But apparently not in Trinidad and Tobago, as far as I'm aware. You could correct me if I'm wrong. And that's just one aspect about where we just don't take certain things about life seriously. Serious things about life, we don't take it seriously. We, not the THA, not the TTPS, not just the government, because all of those people come from society. In fact, the only people who apparently understand the gravity of the situation they find themselves in, ironically, unfortunately, are the criminals. They at least are true to themselves with regards to the life they choose when they say, I don't expect to live past 25. No, the rest of us are happy-go-lucky, and we have no issue with just, oh, wait, there's an emergency. Who would have thought that an emergency could happen? And then we have situations like this, where we just don't respond. We don't respond to tragedy. We don't respond to any sort of significant law breaking. We don't want to be involved. Or isn't that unfortunate for that poor lady? Or isn't that unfortunate for that poor family? Once it's not us, seemingly we don't care. We show more concern about what's happening half a world away, not even consistently on everything that happens around the world, by the way. We selectively are outraged over who dies. But hey, we show more concern about foreign concerns than our own concerns. And then now that complacency translates to a lack of preparedness. And I am sure we could ask Ashraf, and we have talked about it before. We have talked about it before, where there are potential deficiencies in our disaster management. But at least with regards to things like hurricane preparedness and flood prevention and stuff, the trick with that is you have a budgetary issue, which means that there will always be issues there. You can't solve all the problems there. So you have to have some amount of reasonableness. But with regards to basic law breaking, basic health and safety, basic emergency response, basic law enforcement response, basic societal response. We're not talking about some freak accident, right? Where 100 tons of water just descended in a valley and washed away a community, you know, that we never saw coming. There was nothing close to it anywhere on historical record. No, we're not talking about anything like that. Because I am just getting frustrated at all too often some of the ugliness, whether it is intentional or whether it is due to complacency, some of the ugliness of our society, we just kind of accept it. And it bothers me. Case in point, we just kind of accept it, right? We get a lot of lip service about campaign finance reform. And we think about it, right? Is anyone against it? Does anyone believe that the politician that they support is beyond reproach, has done nothing wrong, has never done nothing wrong, and they are willing to bet their life on it? That there are politicians who are completely uncorrupt and they could vouch for that? and they are content with the situation, the status quo as is, and they don't need to see any changes, anybody. Law of averages says there will be some people who will say yes, right? The question is it necessarily a genuine belief, or is it just blind faith? Now, the Minister of Defense apparently promised campaign finance reform, but which is ironic because he is one of the cases that has been a catalyst for the latest rounds of the conversation, right? He says he fully supports campaign finance reform, unlike the previous AG, who promised it in virtually every one of his Senate contributions, but failed to deliver over the next decade. All right, first of all, I do find it interesting that he announced it. This is one of those things where I'm starting to dislike how the government communicates. It potentially comes across as very disjointed. Because when you have major announcements like this, it's very easy to say, I can't believe that, because if the Prime Minister doesn't say it, it loses a certain level of weight. And if other ministers don't say it, that's the next step, it loses a certain level of weight. And ironically, for the very same reason why, yes, he says Faris Awari promised it for years, did not deliver. That's cute. You saying it once in response to accusations against you does not really make me think, oh, this is definitely something that's going to happen. Now, campaign finance reform has been an issue. And the thing is, it's been an issue where we've heard about it, it's been bandied about, right? The PNM failed to do it. Let's be real, that's just what it is. They could have implemented it because there was no need for any special majority, and it could not have been stopped by the opposition. Something else stopped it. This is a quote from Professor Hamid Ghani. So the strategy that was used by then Prime Minister Rashid Trawley's government was to go the route of amending the Representation of the People Act 1967, which was an existing law for which only a simple majority was required for amendment. Right? But it seemed to try to do more on regulating campaign finance. It was all trying to introduce some kind of regulatory framework for political parties that interrogated their political views and choices that had nothing to do with campaign finance. So, I don't know, this is one of the things that bothers me when there seems to be excess stuff piggybacking a legislation, but you're not campaigning on the other stuff, you're campaigning on the promise, the basic promise, you know, strip it down, campaign finance reform. We couldn't get it from the PN. Now the UNC is saying they're going to do it. All right, I'll believe it when I see it. Not because of any special bias against the UNC. It is, to be fair, a bias against all politicians. I'll believe it when I see it. I think within the last 15 to 20 to 25 years, it's not as though the government of Trinidad and Tobago, which included terms of office of the UNC, has a great track record of a legislative agenda that was implemented effectively. Some of the failed legislation that we've had over the last 15 years came from the partnership, like the anti-gang bill. It's not as though that really solved anything. Funny enough, that had a sunset clause. Isn't that something? Meanwhile, it's not as though the population is saying, hey, you know what? Maybe we would like better representation. How about we start demanding, as a people, campaign finance reform? Or we start demanding, as members of a party, that this be on the agenda of our political leadership. How about something? No? Because ironically, if we're going to look at situations that could cause people to get killed or physically injured, have their rights deprived, if we're going to be very lazy when it comes to responding to those things, Why do you expect us to be effective as a democratic population to participate in a democracy in an effective manner? We are far too content on just letting whatever be to be. All right, moving on a bit from this, a couple of things to get to. One, the TTPS is saying that there's a rise in violent crime. They're going to review and strengthen their crime-fighting initiatives, including increased patrols. I don't know if that also might be increased roadblocks. We'll see how that goes, right? The efforts yielded some successes. There's still more work to be done. I think this, and what's going to happen to some degree, people are going to think, oh, but the state emergency is working, the murder rate is down. Why are you complaining about it? Not complaining about the state emergency by saying that it can't suppress the murder rate. I'm saying that it can't suppress the murder rate forever, unless you want to live under a state of emergency forever. And at some point, the criminals are going to figure it out. And I believe now the police are basically, they've reached the point where the criminals are starting to figure some things out. We need to try and stay ahead of them just to maintain the status quo. But then the problem is, can the status quo be maintained without the state of emergency? Because I'm not sure if we could really have tourism what we needed to potentially be post-oil if we are still dependent on some long-term state of emergency. Let's not forget the government has kept saying that they could solve crime within a few years, or they've implied that things are going to be short-term, not long-term. To be fair, the Minister of Homeland Security acknowledged that social programs are necessary to solve crime in one of his last sit-down, right? I can't remember exactly what he said around that. But it's not about, I'm not here to say, you see the police, you're wrong. You see government, you're wrong. No, I'm just pointing to the reality. The police have said that crime is rising. They need to put more effort in. But my fear is, how much more effort can they put in? Assuming that they are basically getting all the officers to put on a reasonable amount of effort. You cannot sustain 110%. You can't. Ironically, you technically can't sustain 100%. Because in theory, if you say all of our officers, 100%, we're showing up, that means you have no reserve. That means you have no field safe. That means potentially you have no rotation. And yes, you could do that in cases of emergencies or for limited periods like Carnival. But the way how this is going to be at minimum a 6-month state of emergency, which is after a 6-month state of emergency. How much more in the tank you have to give? This is one of the most common mistakes employers and bosses make. The assumption they are not going to do this themselves, unless they're one of those real crazy, ambitious CEO types, right? That want to work 60 to 80 hours a week. They are going to expect their employees to compensate for their lack of strategic depth by utilizing effort. The thing is, you could do that sometimes. You could do that in emergencies. You could do that when you're running out of options. But if you are consistently in that one of those scenarios, then potentially it's a strategy problem. It's a leadership problem. And it doesn't necessarily mean the police executive. It could be higher than that. It could be lower than that, right? The day-to-day leadership is technically lower than the executive level. There's been reports of discolored water in Central and South Trinidad yesterday, I believe, or the day before. This is as water continues repair work on the transmission pipeline on Beetham Gardens. Now, I'm not entirely sure how the they assured customers the water remains safe for use. The issue affects only the appearance of the supply, not its quality or safety. Obviously, I don't think you could drink or should drink discolored water regardless of how safe it is. Maybe you could wash with it. Maybe you could bathe with it. That's Run it up to a few minutes until the water runs clear, which will help remove any remaining sediments within service lines. That's generally the case, so we'll see. Finally, I'll end with this. Actually no. I'll save the talk about Tobago for tomorrow. Let's take a break. When we come back, yes, the whole leadership of Tobago. It's interesting. I didn't realize that perhaps maybe the narrative turned it into a 2-horse race instead of a 1-horse race. But we'll see how that unfolds. I'll speak about what's been reported so far tomorrow. We'll take a break. When we come back, the review. Then, of course, we should have with us our media ambassador later on the show. Stay tuned. This is Talk About on WSN, the Content Capital. We'll be right back after this.
Very important. There is an intrinsic neurotrophic factor that is released via myokines. That is some peptides that we have in our muscle that produce neuromodulation and increase that peptide in the brain to increase the neurocognitive of the brain.
I'm glad you said that. Right. So exercise has an important part to play in the aging brain. As we get older, our gray matter does shrink. We have reduction of synapses, but exercise is shown to actually improve our cognitive functioning.
Totally.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
The home of Caribbean content is growing, and we welcome you to be a part of the #1 platform for young personalities who are driven to make a positive impact in society. As we continue to reach every corner of Trinidad and Tobago through our daily broadcasts, our social media pages, or through our 75+ digital billboards across the nation, contact us to learn about our competitive rates via marketing at wesncc.com or call us at 628-5835. WESN Content Capital, television with a difference.
Hi, I am Emiliana Beechan and I am a mental health and conflict resolution consultant. Welcome to Mind Matters, the show where we explore the intricate world of mental health and the art of conflict resolution. Join us as we hear from mental health professionals, conflict resolution experts, and everyday people who have transformed their lives through understanding and communication. Mind Matters, WESN Content Capital.
I'm back here and talking about the WSND Content Capital, and unfortunately there's a lot of reports with regards to what's going on with regards to the whole CARICOM brouhaha situation, impasse, etc., etc., etc. And on some level, since last week, there was a part of me that had this in the back of my mind, and I did not express this forwardly enough, if, you know, forgive me for kind of making up a phrase, but I guess that's maybe the best way I could come up with of putting it across. I did not put it front and center. I did not give it its just due. And the question is exactly what is the practical issue here? And this is for both sides. What is the practical issue here? Is it tied to the whole situation with the letter sent to CARICOM over the plane used in the Brent Thomas affair, which it is of my individual opinion that it's less important to me what CARICOM has to say, and it's more important to me with regards to what the government of Trinidad and Tobago has to say. And by the government of Trinidad and Tobago, obviously, as it was a different administration, it's still the government of Trinidad and Tobago, right? And also what the government of Barbados has to say. And then to some extent, CARICOM, because of the CARICOM impacts or whatever was the regional security plan, blah, 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 blah. But this whole thing, what I find extremely interesting is how we have yet to get someone to really give us the entire breakdown over what happened. Now, apparently, the chairman of CARICOM, he responded, but the response by the CARICOM chair it's been interpreted in two different ways in our local media, right? So, but also, one of the ways that it was reported was that TNT did not attend key discussions or subsequent emergency meetings convened to address the issue. Now, the question is our government justified for that stance? Not wanting to engage in dialogue usually is not a good sign unless it was a decision made as last resort because they don't want to participate in fake proceedings, basically. Because their concerns are not actually being addressed, their questions are not being answered. And if it's the case where the proceedings are not being done in good faith, then as a last resort, I could understand the decision to say, I'm not going to participate in your nonsense any longer until I get a straight answer, right? On some level, it's a very human response, but it's not necessarily something that you should opt into prematurely. The question is it too soon? Then one of the other reports is pointing out to the fact that apparently in the correspondence, there was no clear indication on the agenda that the decision to reappoint the Secretary General would take place at the retreat, which is that starts to speak on the key issues of what did TNT know. Because it seemed as though officially it was just a retreat. And if that is the case, because they want to make a big deal about Minister Sober saying, well, I get seasick, so I don't want to go. If he didn't know that there was something this important on the agenda, then you can't blame him for complaining about it after the fact. Granted, the way how everyone structures and frames what they say, there's no clear indicator. So Minister Sobers and our government, our Prime Minister to some extent as well, is guilty of not necessarily being clear and concise and consistent with what they're saying. So, but at the end of the day, if there was no indication on the agenda that this was going to be on the agenda, right, they decided on the day of the retreat to deal with this matter with more than one head of state missing. You see, once they decided to do it on the day of, you can't say, well, you should have known. Well, how would they have known if it was the day of? So on some level, that stinks, right? If our government is playing hardball prematurely, that stinks. But all of this is over what exactly? Because I would argue, one, why is our government making a big deal about this? What is the practical value? There probably is, but it has not been made clear to me, to my satisfaction. And two, why does it seem as though the CARICOM heads of government are acting like school children and then are confused why some people are questioning their decisions? Because I get it. There's the whole, this is, as President Irfin said, he said nothing went wrong, it was all procedurally correct. I would argue, just because something is procedurally correct doesn't make it just, doesn't make it ethical. There's a lot of unethical things that were procedurally correct based on the laws of the land. I won't go into what they are, but they were technically legal. Because it's very telling that no one has pointed to what does the rules or the charter or the treaty, what does it say, subsection where, section this, what is the wording, by what regulation is this correct, is this wrong, what was the, they can't even say what was the general procedure that they followed, regardless of whether it was the actual formal one or if it was an informal thing that they just kind of everyone accepted and adopted. Because again, we don't know how to take things seriously. And on some level, I guess it's not just us, it's the rest of the Caribbean as well. In one of the reports, a local political analyst, this is Dr. Winford James, he rightfully is reported to have said that he believes the country does not sufficiently understand the government's position on Bartnett's reappointment. Answers are needed for some important questions, and I agree with this. Did CARICOM break a law or break a rule? It seems from all information that I have that CARICOM did not break any rules. That could be true even if the chairman, apparently according to his correspondence, indicated that there was nothing on the agenda for her reappointment. It was decided by those who were present at the time. That technically might be within the bounds of the rules. That's why I said, just because it's within the bounds of the rules doesn't necessarily make it ethical. And here's one of those things that I have used against our politicians, the appearance of. If you already have a situation where CARICOM is fracturing, why are you then going to apparently, for the sake of your convenience, decide to do something that will have the appearance of going behind other regional leaders' backs? Doesn't have to be the intention, but it's hard not to consider that the other heads of government were more than happy to just do their business without Trinidad and Tobago's input. Maybe they didn't want our input. Again, the appearance of going behind our backs doesn't actually have to be the case. It's like the appearance of a conflict of interest. If you are strategic and diplomatic, you would know not to do things like this because it might cause an issue. It might cause division. If someone did something like this in your personal life, it would cause an issue. It's up to you to accept it or not. Now, in the cases on the level of nation states, it will be a precedent. And if you accept it, then you have to basically accept that this will be the level of treatment moving forward because you have consented to it the first time. Now, I don't know if it was done before. That's why, again, it could be one of those things where everyone took it for granted that it's fine that we do this. But in normal times, maybe, but during times where seemingly leaders in CARICOM are split, if you really care about keeping CARICOM together, why do this? Why not do your job properly? That is to say, formally determine where on the agenda, because why was this not formally on an agenda? To say, don't go, we have this thing to sort out, and if our Prime Minister, Kamala Bisesa, decided to still leave early and miss it, and our Foreign Minister decided to not go on the board because they got seasick, then it's our fault. Then there is no appearance of nothing. And perhaps now, the veneer of statesmanship by other regional leaders is merely that, a veneer, where most of what they have to say, that's what it's starting to look like to me. It's more about buzzwords and popularity and political ideology than actual statesmanship and hard decisions and efforts into actually being diplomatic, which is not easy. It's not. But it seems as though everybody in this situation wants to take the easy way out, potentially our government as well. Dr. James also asked, apparently, our Prime Minister doesn't want Bartlett to be, Mrs. Bartlett, to be reappointed. Why? Although he says she's not obligated to give a reason, I would argue I'm not so sure about that with regards to leadership. Yes, you're not obligated, but if you want, that's the thing, you have to know when to explain and when you shouldn't explain. And is this one of those times when you shouldn't explain? I'm not sure. But also, I think it all comes back down to, well, why did the other regional leaders decide to do this in a laissez-faire manner? That might not be as important as a question, but then it potentially is, depending on what the answer is, of similar importance to Dr. James' question with regards to why does the Prime Minister not want the reappointment to occur. Now, another political consultant, Peter Wickham, is saying that the whole situation is damaging regional unity and diverting attention from more substantive issues. The last part I will agree with. The first part I will potentially disagree with on the basis that it didn't start with this. It didn't start with this one, and it doesn't seem to be the Prime Minister's fault alone. She might be culpable, she has her own responsibilities to play for her part in it, but it doesn't seem to be her fault alone, based on the chairman of CARICOM, and at least one interpretation of it. Right? Is the ongoing back and forth most unfortunate? Here's the reality, though. Things like this are bound to happen. We are all sovereign states with duly elected representatives who have our own individual national agenda. By the way, as much as people try to make it an ideological taboo of racism or what have you, nationalism at its core literal meaning is what every nation practices. And those politicians who you could actively point to not practicing it, at times you could argue they are not operating in the full duty to their country and the people who they represent. Well, that's an ideological debate. Don't call it on that to debate that. I'm not here for that right now. You want to debate this? Let's debate this. Right? Because again, I am going to point it down to what, as far as I'm aware, now there could be a lot of backstory and back history between people who are aligned with the UNC and allies across the region with the UNC and those who are aligned and allied with the PNM across the region, right? That I don't know. But when it comes to CARICOM and splintering CARICOM, the Venezuelan question was where it started for me. This current rounds of tension, right? That's where it started. Now, unfortunately, politically, we have a new government who has a different agenda than the previous government. But at the end of the day, my stance on the whole threat of Venezuela has been consistent from PNM to UNC. My stance on CARICOM acting two-faced with regards to Guyana has been consistent. So to say that now all of a sudden, oh, the Prime Minister is doing this thing. I mean, at the end of the day, CARICOM was involved with the Brent Thomas affair. And while I might not prioritize CARICOM's involvement to the degree that the Prime Minister is, it's telling that they were involved with that nonsense. And then, of course, now, if you want to add conspiracy theory layers to it, because I don't have evidence, you have to wonder if the whole regional political alliances was one of the reasons why that nonsense was allowed to happen in the first place. Because we're complacent. Because we are too relaxed. Because we're not alarmed at the fact that potentially personal relationships leading multiple sovereign states in this country led to one of our citizens losing his rights, having his rights stepped upon, and then having governments attempt to downplay it or ignore it. But I wonder now, tell me, who they're going to turn to if their crime problem gets out of control, as it already started to, I believe, either just before COVID or just after. I think it was just before COVID. They're going to come to us. They're going to go to the Americans. They're going to bring back the colonizers that a lot of them seemingly have great issue with. Who are they going to ask for help? No, we're going to probably have another conference about crime as a public health issue. That solved it. Look how much actionable things that came out of that conference. Or the entire region came and met on our dime for nothing. Just by the way. And it's not as though there were programs that the UNC came in and cut. Because of their energy needs, they had their own agendas. That's nice. But at the cost of potential sovereignty of another member of CARICOM, do we not see a potential issue here? Because it could have been us. Just by the way, it could have been us. So I'm not saying our Prime Minister is blameless. But given the fact that no one could give us a clear explanation as to the who, what, when, where, why, how, this entire thing stings to me because, ironically, this is not the most important issue, in my opinion, that CARICOM has faced, the appointment or reappointment of the Secretary General. We had a dual state-sponsored kidnapping, and we had a potential regional dispute backstabbing. The reappointment of Secretary General, behind our backs, at that point, that's not that big of a deal to me. Right? That's why they're still harping on the seasick remark. That's why they're still going on with Prime Minister not showing up. It would be fine, prove to us that our government knew that vote was going to take place, therefore it was clearly, if that is the case, then it will be our fault for not participating. Now, the concern is this could cost the economy billions. The opposition is claiming 7.5 billion in annual trade benefits. That might be true. That might be true. Does it make it right? Because the problem is the precedents you set now, that will be how people treat with you. Let me give you a hint. It might seem as though America is going off the rails, and to some extent that is true. America is going off the rails, because staying on the rails was a predictable situation that people can and did take advantage of. Now, you could question the level of aggression. You could question whether or not the American government is going too far. But the sad truth is, people have uneven expectations, and for whatever reason, are more than happy wanting their allies to suffer in order to benefit the people who threaten them because of their own agendas. That is a regular occurrence. Now, in this case, are we going to lose access to all 7.5 billion in trade benefits? Maybe, maybe not. I think the situation is more complex than that. That is a danger. But ironically, as someone who is saying that the economy has no money and the like, the question is, just because we're going to lose this money, are we potentially going to be a part of something that is this dysfunctional? It appears dysfunctional. It has the appearance of dysfunction. CARICOM will only benefit the region if CARICOM acts in a more serious manner and acts in a less amateurish manner. And right now, it seems as though perhaps they all took the bait. I remember saying at one point in time years ago, right, the government essentially was baited by the opposition UNC, and I'm like, why did you fall for that bait? Now, the question is, you know, did the various heads of CARICOM, are they falling for the bait of the current Trinidad and Tobago administration? Because if the other regional heads are so much more statesmen and so much more diplomatic and so much more capable and so much etc., blah, 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 they are so much more in the right and stuff like that, their behavior probably will look differently. Their explanations probably would be more effective. The level of details they'll be willing to offer probably would just be more. But a lot of the arguments, they kind of look as limited, but on both sides, not just on our side. So it seems to be just everyone is accustomed to playing some of the same political games, and now we're just doing it at a regional level. We have graduated. Now our political nonsense is not limited to our various countries alone. Now we're going to just bust open the mark. And I would argue it was only a matter of time. Because you see similar things across Europe, North America, etc., etc. It's only a matter of time when people will start to utilize their own foolishness of their own domestic political games with regards to their approaches to international politics. It's only a matter of time. Very unserious people. Unserious. And that's why, dare I say, most of our problems are of our own making, and we could never get out of our own way. All right, we should have the media ambassador here. Okay, let's take the comment, because it's a true comment. If we can, What I find ironic is our Prime Minister calling for CARICOM to be transparent when she and her government are not transparent on so many issues in Trinidad. I was like, yes, it's true. It is true. That's why I say I can't say that our government is correct on this issue. Everyone has been not really showing us their full hand, talking around the proceedings, making aspirations around the proceedings, and because again, the Prime Minister should say, why did she leave early? Was it really because the Minister of Foreign Affairs got to see, there has to be a much more comprehensive explanation of, well, I didn't want to get seasick. Now, based on the correspondence with CARICOM, that's what they will infer. But there has to be more to it than that. In that, well, it's a Prime Minister's retreat, and since there's no official business on the agenda, according to the reports on what the chairman of CARICOM revealed, the vote was not on the agenda. Therefore, the Foreign Affairs Minister is probably saying this is not a business meeting. It's more of a relaxation or entertainment activity. So I don't need to go. That would be understandable. But we are not even getting proper communications on this issue from our side. It's all scatterbrained, all chopped up into bits and pieces, randomly, just thrown out there. Not necessarily any great order. The narrative is one hell of a mess. And that's why Dr. James is basically saying, well, I mean, there's a lot more explaining that needs to come from our government. Very true. So that's why I ask, how important is this issue? Really, how important is it? We don't even know exactly what was the travesty that happened. Yes, we know that a vote happened and we weren't there. We don't have the full context. No one has tried to. They have told us what it is. They have not explained to us what it is. Right? They made a claim. If it was a court of law, the claim probably would be thrown out because it's unsubstantiated. They made a claim. That's it. An unsubstantiated claim. So they told us what it is according to them. They didn't actually explain to us what it is based on facts of the case, matters on record, rules, procedures on record, all of that. None of that was done. None of that was done. And we get where we get. So if everyone could kind of dance around this issue and play foolish games with it, I wonder, this is probably one of the least important stupidities that I have seen governments fall out over in quite some time. Because at least Europe has actual concerns, whether you agree with it or not, on, international violence. That's kind of important. And you could see where people are coming from who don't necessarily want it to happen. I get it. What is this? Let's take that break now. The media ambassador should be here. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after this.
Maybe he landed here totally by coincidence. But if by chance he's admiring your fresh coat of Benjamin Moore soft sky blue, well, that's a pretty high compliment. Coming from an expert.
Hi, I am Emiliana Beechan, and I am a mental health and conflict resolution consultant. Welcome to Mind Matters, the show where we explore the intricate world of mental health and the art of conflict resolution. Join us as we hear from mental health professionals, conflict resolution experts, and everyday people who have transformed their lives through understanding and communication. Mind Matters, WESN Content Capital.
Pastor J, I want to get a tattoo.
You really want
to me. Respond to me. How you would respond to me?
The first question I'll ask is why.
Controversial taboo topics.
We get so consumed by church, we forget that we have to live the life of being a Christian outside of the Sunday.
Like you say,
services.
we think going to a service makes us a Christian.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. So here we are about to hear the second time Pastor J wanted to take a tattoo.
Would have been late last year and early this year.
Oh gosh.
Hope Unfiltered podcast with Pastor J and Ren.
Something very important, there is an intrinsic neurotrophic factor that is released through myokines, that is some peptides that we have in our muscle that produce neuromodulation and increase that peptide in the brain to increase the neurocognitive of the brain.
I'm glad you said that. Right. So exercise has an important part to play in the aging brain. As we get older, our gray matter does shrink. We have reduction of synapses, but exercise is shown to actually improve our cognitive functioning.
Totally.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
This is 10 questions. I'm Andy Johnson. The distance from where we should be in the world in going forward on our commitments with climate change.
The effects of climate change that cannot be accounted for, it's called loss and damage, and we're seeing loss and damage happening so much more in this decade and the previous decade.
The principal term there was this question of the correspondent banking issues.
That is why we're trying to build capacity with this country here, Trinidad and Tobago, and other countries in the region. Man is not showing any signs of stopping or even slowing down. More than half of the forest in Trinidad is already gone.
All the plants and all the animals and all of the nice clean water and fresh air and everything had to be on this planet for humanity to have a chance.
We have small change when it comes to countries that can take decisions, and when they speak, the world listens.
The General Assembly is a very democratic forum. And Trinidad and Tobago has the same vote as Canada, in spite of the obvious difference in size.
We're back and talking about the WSN Con and Capital Show. Michael Small, joined by acting SP Christopher Rood, TTPS Media Ambassador for Talking Point on WSN. Chris, welcome back.
Hey, thanks for having me, Sean. Good day to you, your viewers, and your colleagues.
Okay, so the big thing is the murder rate. We've now reached 100.
Correct. Yeah.
Now, for our population level, the 100 mark actually is a really bad mark. I think when Oakland reached around 100 plus murders, and I believe their population is a little bit less than ours, that was a big deal for them, right? So we kind of take it for granted because we've seen 300, 400, 500, 600 murders, not really understanding for our population size. 100 murders is not really something that you want to see.
Correct, yeah. Well, definitely 100 murders. I mean,
condolences to the family and the families of those deceased persons. We never really wanted this amount of murders in Trinidad and Tobago, and we've seen it growing exponentially over the past few decades. So we are trying our best. What we recognize as TTPS is that our issue with crime in Trinidad and Tobago is not just top-level white-collar crime and down-level and low-level pushing of drugs and whatnot. We've seen the criminal networks throughout Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean making themselves manifestly greater in terms of the crime situation, being involved at different levels of crime in Trinidad and Tobago, and we are trying our best to dismantle these gangs. We recognize there are many gangs in Trinidad and Tobago, and they exist and they operate on threats and extortion and drug running, gun running, smuggling, human trafficking and whatnot. So we are seeing these activities taking place, and we're trying. So you see in the media now where the TTPS is actively, even more than before, where we go after these criminal entities. We go after the guns, we go after the drugs, we go after the human trafficking and whatnot. So you're seeing that the TTPS is trying its best and to dismantle gangs. You even see the TTPS arresting police officers who we believe allegedly involved in gang activity. You know, we get information from members of the public where police officers are escorting, passing on information and whatnot, and are actively involved in gang activity throughout Trinidad and Tobago.
Is it one of the issues is like the relationship of crime? At times, it's a combination of, yes, you have the transnational stuff, and you have the big boys, right?
Correct.
But then also, it is connected in a volatile way or an ever-changing way with the street-level crime who actually does a lot of the dirty work on the activities. And you have these gangs, like last week I remarked, I saw a documentary way back from like 2011. That was back when you had unruly ISIS and Rasta City.
Right.
And then at that time, because what we saw is new gangs were formed as people split up. But even at that time, one activist in the community was taking the reporters wrong and pointing to one, I can't remember which community it was, but like there was one gang in that community, in that area, and then it's fractured into like multitudes of gangs who were warring each other. He was saying you had people that grew up together that bitterly hated each other. And the issue is it's almost like every generation potentially goes through some form of this cycle, and the police now have to play catch up again, because it's not like, well, it's the same guy, it's the same group of people, it's the same criminals with the same MO. And it's not even to say the gangs are going to stay the same, like how you would have the mafia, it's the same families. They're going to splinter apart and form like half a dozen new gangs, and you'll have to now try to figure out, okay, who is what.
So, you know, when you speak about the mafia, you speak about organized crime. When you speak about gangs in Trinidad, you're speaking about both organized crime and disorganized crime. So you're talking about persons, as you said, on the low level, carrying out the threats and the executions and whatnot. And then you have the higher the heads at higher levels. So it's a tier system where they don't get their hands dirty, but they pass on the job to another group of persons to commit these violent acts and whatnot. But within itself, within the gang itself, they would have, if it's an established, organized group, they would have different levels within the group that commit criminal activity as well as violent crimes without sending it out to other persons on the street and whatnot. So you had different types of gangs, and you had different levels of gangs. And, you know, as you said, with how they disperse their activities, whether it be established and it within the organization, within the organized crime group, or they pass it on to other groups to commit those offenses. So you have hiring and whatnot and executions taking place outside of the group as well.
It almost seems as though, and I don't know if they themselves would describe it exactly this way, but based on what I've been told by prison officers or others, right, including, I think, from the police itself, you always hear the talk that, you know, a lot of these young men, they don't have long life expectancy for themselves.
We recently looked at one of the murders in the northern area. So you have a group in the northern area that is an established criminal gang. And what they do, well, all gangs basically criminal. So what they do, they actually pay a stipend to their members.
Right.
Right. And that member would have committed a shooting in the northern area. And then he himself would have been killed recently in the northern area.
Right.
Because of the heat he probably brought onto the gang and whatnot. And he was being paid as a stipend basically every month for being in the gang. So this is how established and how these gangs operate. And they operate on extortion. I think the suspect wanted, he went to extort from somebody, from a member of the public, and a shooting was committed and he himself was eventually killed.
Because the thing is, to me, I find it very strange, because usually the cliched story in North America is, oh, we're a family, we take care of each other, blah, 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 right?
Yeah.
And of course, whenever somebody dies in a gang in America, it leads to a set of reprisal killings because it's very personal, right? Whereas here in Trinidad, I wonder, you know, to what degree, yes, some of the same emotional hooks are used, but not in the sense of we're a family. Yes, when there are interviews where gang members kind of talk about things on that level, but it doesn't go quite as far, I feel, as though when American gangsters or former gangsters.
Yeah.
The reason why I say that is, it seems like our young men who are involved in crime, whether they know it or not, they view themselves almost like, if they view themselves, not just their bosses, as expendable.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And this is something
So
that I don't think...
You don't see that family relationship within those gangs. Yeah.
I don't
But
think...
they do have so they are established gangs that have that type of family relationship.
Dynamic.
That dynamic.
But
there are other gangs that don't have that dynamic.
But the thing is, in the States, I don't think any gangster would want to describe himself as being expendable, right? And even if the boss, the head of the gang, thinks that way, that's not something he would admit. But it seems as though...
They never admitted, Sean, but it is...
I know it is the way, but it seems like though our young men have no issue with full knowledge. Because they themselves are like, look, I ain't going to survive. And
that's the sad reality that they understand that these young men committing these violent acts, including murder, without hesitation, because, and they know and they don't care that they commit these acts, knowing that they will not live that long after. You understand? So that is the mentality and temperament of the young men that we have in these gangs. They are out there, they don't see it as a family, some of them do, but they understand that they don't have long to live. So they go out there nevertheless.
And the thing is, why that's scary to me is, if it is a case where a gang, where their motivations are, because that's generally how it started out, right? It's to protect your street, to protect your community, right? And
that's how it started off.
That's how it started off, and that's how it, to some extent, that's how it starts off here too.
Yeah.
But when you no longer, you're not doing it for community. You're not even doing it so that you could make money and hopefully retire someday. You literally have like zero life expectancy.
You have zero life expectancy.
Right? First of all, what does the police have for policing? Right? Forget social programs or not, or even social programs to convince these guys don't do this. Because usually, what is the scared straight stuff? It's because, hey, your friend died for nothing. Hey, the gang don't really care about your friend who died and your next friend who died and your next friend who died. Why do you think they care about you? And then at some point, the realization hits home, hey, I'm just going to end up dead. I don't want to end up dead. I'm going to do something about it. But locally, y'all don't have that lever to pull.
Right, but I mean, we do have in crime fighting strategies that we do utilize when it comes to the gangs by dismantling them, of course, one. But the other key strategies we use, especially with community policing, is that when we go into a community that has gangs involved in it, is that we use all the stakeholders approach, where we bring in different stakeholders, whether it be licensing and the fire service and whoever, anybody who could offer the community some form of hope in getting out of these gang activities and whatnot, depending on the state or the police service as opposed to the gang members themselves, because the gang members mind the community. Yeah? They take care of the community. Who doesn't have groceries, they send groceries. Who needs money for school, they send them to school. If they need clothes, and if their house was burnt down and whatnot, the gangs in those communities assist the communities. And the communities feel some kind of
gratitude
towards and they protect the gang. So and this is not in every single case. There are communities that doesn't want anything to do with gangs.
Yes.
But in some cases, the communities live together with the gangs, and the gangs take care of the community. And unfortunately, the police have to try and go in there and convince the community, listen, the gang is not there for your best interest. The gangs are going to exploit you, they're going to extort you, they're going to rape you, they're going to commit violent acts against you, and you would stay quiet. So they have people in the community that would take care of the gangs, because the gangs take care of them.
It's just that I've now come to the realization that on some level, the street soldiers, the street level soldiers of the gangs, mentally, that's what any dictator would want out of soldiers. You're willing to die. You are so committed to whatever it is you're committed to. You don't even care that you're going to die. You are a one-way missile, a human weapon.
One of the dynamics you have to recognize in Trinidad is totally different from the US, even Jamaica. So in Jamaica, you have gangs that would attack you, opposing gang member, and just you. In Trinidad, they go after your family as well.
Right.
So you have gangs attacking gang members' families. So you have this chaotic situation where if you're in a gang and you're opposing each other, and a member of the family from this community goes into that community, they get killed.
Right.
Because they are marked as a different community or a different part of or in a different gang, because they are members of the family of a different gang.
This is not collateral. This is not, well, we shot into a crowd and family member.
No.
This was
targeted. Targeted, yeah. So they go after your family members, and most often than not, they hit them, and then you see the murder rate going up.
Does it make it, I mean, these differences, I think perhaps we have not fully appreciated as a society how much more difficult it is. If you have gangsters who are willing to die. Right, then the threat of it, and I have said this before, but I think it kind of makes it even more stark to me. Or we're going to threaten you with jail.
Yeah, that doesn't.
That really doesn't seem to be much of anything.
No, it doesn't, because I've actually seen evidence. We have photographic evidence, video footage evidence, we have eyewitness testimony, we have DNA evidence, we caught you red-handed evidence, if you basic, and they still don't plead guilty. They fight the system, they go through the system. This is why the judiciary is so overwhelmed.
Right.
Because but now I'm seeing these plea bargaining working to some extent, right? Because in a few cases I had before the High Court recently, they took the plea bargain, and the defendants took the plea bargain, and we were able to finish off the matters. So you're seeing that now probably happening more. But the gang members, they fight the system. They're not going to go down that way. They're going to kill the witnesses. They're going to attack the community that the witnesses come from.
Ironically, one of the issues that kind of did in the mafia was that subsequent generations were softer than the originals who fresh off the boat from Sicily and real hardline, made of that stain of stuff. I wonder if, one, that could happen here with the gangsters at some point, but also two, if you all offer that, I mean, maybe, do you think plea bargaining is working in part because, A, we actually have something to offer, so they actually have something that could give them, I mean, people might say, why do you care about criminals? A, if they have no hope, what's going to get them to turn around, get them to stop? And maybe plea bargaining is just like, it might prove, A, if you have something for them.
But when you look at different jurisdictions, they have different laws, including laws for snitching. So if you would snitch on a colleague or a partner in crime and whatnot, it reduces your sentence. So they build up this. So this snitching thing is a big thing in
because that's how they broke up the mafia too.
Right. Yeah. So and they were able to. So you might be inside for 20, 25 years, and you were able to snitch on a fellow inmate. And when you do that, your sentence gets reduced to 3 to 5 years. If you understand, it depends on the it's a tier system. So it depends on the kind of information you bring to the to law enforcement. And law enforcement would be able to use your testimony and your information to probably to arrest or to make some arrests or to capture somebody in terms of criminality. So you might be in prison. So this is different jurisdictions, right? So you might be in prison and you're aware of, let me say, a drug deal going to happen, and you're able to provide that to law enforcement, and law enforcement does the acts on the information, arrest persons and gets the drugs and whatnot. That information was successful, then they would be able to come now to you and reduce your sentence.
Now, I think the key is or at least the beginning of the key is what we saw recently with the amount of police officers that got detained by PDOs.
Yeah.
I would argue, though, for things like that to work, you also need the prison service to have a similar undertaking as well.
Yeah.
And it's not it doesn't have to be a whole big number. But the point is, once you show, there's a level of accountability in this situation now, it will limit, but also it probably is not that many who are corrupt, and you just need to find the ones who are.
Well, the information at hand is that the gangs have infiltrated all levels of society and all levels of the government, no, not the government, but the organizations within the country.
They probably do have contacts in various ministries. How useful that is will be, it will vary significantly. But I think part of it is, sometimes when you're a small nation, it helps because everybody knows everybody, so you can't do nothing and get away with it easily. And sometimes it does not help because the criminals come from society, so everybody knows everybody, so they know people who work X, Y, and Z.
One of the things would help is that if we have to outright ban and make all gang activities so illegal and detrimental to the person who involved in the gangs that they don't want to be part of the gangs. You understand? We have to go in that direction. We have to outright ban.
And people might say, well, if jail doesn't work and if death doesn't work, what would work? I would argue being poor.
Yeah.
If the gangs went a way for them to, make money, easy money, right? Because there's always, it's a cost benefit, right? You're doing it because you think, I have no other prospects in life. I don't care if I die tomorrow. I'm getting paid. I could have whatever fun that I want to have. But if the money flow is disrupted too much.
And what you see when you state of emergency is that because of the possibility of you going on a PDO, you see the hesitation of the gangs to come out of that environment and to come out and act up in such a way that they would be arrested on a PDO, because it would be easy if the police and the law enforcement could provide the government, well, the minister, of course, with the information to place somebody on a PDO. So what you have now is that you have a lower activity rate with the gangs because of the state of emergency, because they don't want to go on the PDO.
Yeah.
So they're staying inside, they're behaving themselves. But you're seeing but because of the rise in the murder rate, so you're seeing that they're coming out of the situation now. So the environment or the habits are changing. So they're adapting to the PDOs and the state of emergency now, and they want to come out. So you're seeing that rise in criminal, the murder rate.
Because I guess the last time it was, well, it'll be over, we just wait it out. Yeah. And now that it's reestablished, they're going to probe the situation more.
Yeah. And most likely will continue for a pretty long period of time. So what will happen is that, they're going to adapt. So they realize, well, we have to adapt now. We have to operate within the SOE. And the SOE can't stop you from making money. So we have to make money somehow.
All right, we have Digger Martin on the air. We'll take the call. Caller, good morning. You on the air? Caller, you there?
Yes, I'm here. I'm here.
Morning, you on the air?
Okay, good morning, Sean, and good morning, ESP Arun.
Yeah, it's a good day.
ESP, I want to big up the TTPS. I'm seeing some light at the end of the tunnel. And why I'm saying that, it appears that a concerted effort is being made to cleanse the errant officers in the TTPS.
Yeah.
And I noticed recently 2 officers within the system were held under the PDOs
it's more than 2.
extortion and intimidation of fellow officers.
Yeah.
You know how serious that is? That is one of the reasons that when officers are brought to the court, they are not convicted, because brother officers are intimidated by some of the inherent officers who are basically corrupt. So I want to basically give kudos to the Commissioner of Police, and by extension all those people who are part of putting these officers under PDO and thoroughly investigating it.
Yeah.
The other issue is, I'm hoping that the well-read senior officers in the TTPS listen attentively to the contribution of the Attorney General of Trinidad and Tobago, John Jeremy, when he was part of the debate with respect to coming into Trinidad and going out Trinidad, that particular legislation. And he made a startling revelation. And this has to do with a particular former government minister, his association with a financier in the UK and having a company. What the Attorney General said, that particular minister apparently was tipped off. Now, when you are tipped off, somebody is colluding with you for perverting the course of justice. Am I not right? So the police now must not behave like the immediate issue, has to have the wherewithal to now go and investigate that statement. Don't hide under the cloak of parliamentary privileges. They must be proactive, because in 2025, March 2025, when an ACP by the name of Simon was asked if an investigation is being launched into this issue, he said not or no. So now new information is being put, it might be new information, the same information has been put into Parliament by somebody else. So it's too possible a senior government official might have tipped off the person, or it could be police officers who were part of the investigation with the UK authority, SOCA. I will listen off to your response.
Thanks, Paul.
Well, on the first point where he spoke about, he's seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, I haven't seen that light as yet. Nonetheless, he spoke about police officers on the PDO, which is, he spoke about two. It's more than two. And what I want to commend members of the public who have provided whatever information that assisted the police in conducting these investigations into these alleged offenses and these alleged corrupt practices. And I want to also implore members of the public that any information, because we have information at hand where we are exploring. It's not in the majority, Sean. It's in the minority, where we investigate our own colleagues with these corrupt practices. But we would want members of the public that if they see police officers escorted any gang members, aligning themselves with any gang members, to please, it is the 555 hotline and the 800 tips hotline. Those numbers are confidential. That providing that information is very confidential. In the case of the 800 tips, you could always get a financial reward. However, that information will be important to us. If you don't feel that you can go to the Anti-Corruption Bureau or the Professional Standards Bureau or any TTPS member, if you don't feel you could do that, or even go to a Police Complaints Authority, feel free to call those numbers and provide us with the information. What we do when we capture the information, when that information is recorded, it is confidentially handed over to investigators. And we have very good investigators that pursue these matters, and that way now we can arrest police officers who are allegedly involved in criminal activity and gang activity.
Because it is a catch-22, right? Police officers who are breaking the law, they're not going to do that in the presence of other police officers.
No, well,
like
no,
they're going to, you
not
know,
necessarily.
Unless it's some grand conspiracy, but the grand conspiracies tend to be more of a Hollywood creation than real life. Most conspiracies, you know, that are illegal, whatever, what have you, you know, unless it's like some rogue unit with the veneer of legality, if it's some working for the gang, some very, you know, that's going to be as secret as possible.
Yeah.
So the police aren't necessarily going to be, you know, oh, well, hey, what are you doing over there? But there's always a chance that members of the public will, because there's more members of the public.
Members of the public see these activities, you know.
That's
And
the
that is why
the police is what, 10,000, the public is 1 point something million.
And that's why when you hear members of the public come out and say, no, the police know exactly what's going on, and they don't do anything about it because they're in cahoots with the gang, it's very possible that is true. So what we want, when you have that information, feel free to pass it on.
Because the long-winded point I was going to make is, ironically, you know, someone has to inform somebody of the situation. And of course, I get it. The question to the civilian mind is, well, who can I trust? You've said, check these numbers. Because if they don't, it's not like the corrupt police know what's going on, because the corrupt police are involved. They're not going to arrest themselves.
No, but the thing is, the information could either lead to evidence and persons get charged for the allegations, or the information does not lead to evidence and it remains as information. You understand? So you might have information, so you see activity,
but
and you provide it.
Would build.
But we would build. So there's an investigation. We have investigations. We would, you know, if we have the capability to listen on in conversations, we would get that information. If we have to track persons through their devices, we can do that.
Information, potentially, depending on the level of the information, it could lead to avenues to get evidence. That could lead to justifications for things like search warrants or wiretaps and stuff. But if you have nothing, you can't just...
But we can't take out warrant on information. So that's one of the avenues the police officer. So you don't necessarily take out a warrant on evidence, because you would have if you had the evidence, you charge. So you go to the justice of the peace in some cases, or a master of the high court, or a master, and you say, listen, I have this information, and it's a developing matter, and this is all the information I have thus far, that these activities are taking place, they're using a red card, the number for the red card is so and so that is evidence. Nonetheless, you would obtain the warrant on the littlest evidence you have, but basically it's information. So I have information that this officer is involved in gang activity, and he's using a police vehicle, and we were able to track the police vehicle, and we were able to monitor the police vehicle, and we were able to get this information, and we believe he has $10,000 US in his bag at home, and we want to get a warrant to go and look for it and whatnot, and you get the warrant.
And the thing is, and I guess one of the things people need to understand, because there was that situation where the woman, her family was threatened, and you can't leave and whatever. That was in both the morning papers today, I believe it was, right?
Threatened by police officers?
No, well, here's the thing. Like, on some level, I think people need to understand, if all it takes is the assumed threat of a crooked police officer to attack you, and you're not going to say anything, well, you're kind of giving up too soon almost, and you have the whole society just kind of just there. Yeah, I get it. Maybe in some cases the threat is real. But when you think about, listen, corrupt cops are not gangsters who are just there to have a good time, and if they die by 25, they're going to die by 25. It's a different dynamic. And threats of violence, you know, it's not like the entire police force is backing up that threat of violence, right? So I say that just because I think people need to understand, look, I'm not saying just randomly just go out there and spill your guts to some random person and everything will work out. You know.
But because of the perceived corruption and the perceived threat,
But we can't hold ourselves hostage to this
Exactly.
situation.
No, but we see it a lot in cases of domestic violence, where when police officers, of course, in some cases of domestic violence, police officers are involved as the alleged perpetrators, and they make threats to victims. We pursue the matter, and we have charged police officers for those offenses. And I mean, it might be a lesser form of crime than, you know, gang activities.
Yeah.
But rest assured, there are police officers assigned to these investigations that take their work very seriously, and they would charge police officers for threatening members of the public. So if, especially in gang activities and threats of violence and that kind of thing. So don't feel that there's, you know, that there's what the word they used earlier, there's a collaboration between
Not all, not everybody wearing a badge is going to be in on whatever the scheme is.
Definitely. And then you yourself will make it known to members of the public or even your own family that, listen, I made a report against a police officer and, you know, something may happen.
Here's the thing, and this is where, you know, everything is built on a brick. For those officers that want to kind of be fast and loose, because you still get members of the public complaining, I tried to make a report here and they told me go there.
Right.
It's like, well, one of the benefits of reporting anything anywhere is if I think that there's one crooked cop in this police station, I will go to another police station, right? And hopefully, you know, find, you know, that's one avenue to do it, right?
But when it comes to corruption, alleged corruption against police, beside the police station, you have police complaints authority.
Yes.
Utilize
who are not police officers.
Who are not police officers.
Right.
And utilize that avenue to report them, because when you report them through that avenue, you know, you feel more comfortable. I'm basically speaking to the perception that the member of the public might have against all police officers.
Yes.
So I often hear it, you know, those all the police in that station corrupt. You know, I do expect that to be true. Mm-hmm. But I understand the perception because you see a lack of motivation to deal with the situation.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, you might have a block, I know this block that I don't know why, I've actually seen police officers come in, it's a known block in Northeastern. Police officers hit the block right through. I've seen them get drugs.
Right.
I've seen them arrest persons. And for some reason, the members of the block continue to push drugs, and I'm bewildered because the police do their job,
right?
And they always come. It's very frequent that they hit the block.
It's almost like a regular.
It's a regular thing. They arrest persons, they dismantle the block, and then the same persons in the block, for some reason, they go back to the block and they continue to push, and I don't understand it. And then, you know, so then members of the public will be like, is it that the police not doing anything about it? So when you see that lack of motivation to do something about something, persons in the members of the public will believe the police corrupt. Mm-hmm. They will believe that the police in cahoots with these criminals. But I've actually seen as a police officer, different units within the division in Northeastern hit the block and get things, arrest persons. The matter goes to court because, you know, you find out about it, you hear about it, and they continue to push.
This is one of the things with transparency. It's not just about revealing the bad.
Yeah.
It's about also revealing the good, because you have avenues now where we report on things. This is what happened. This is how many officers that were caught or suspected or charged. Mm-hmm. This is, you know, this is also what the good officers were doing.
Yeah.
What operation and I get it. You don't want to reveal everything. You don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, so you have to, you know what you're saying, but at the same time, all too often, and this is a societal problem, it's not just a TTPS problem,
no.
is the whole, I can't say nothing. Yeah. And then, ironically, it kind of works both ways. When everybody feels as though, well, on a family level, don't air your dirty laundry out in public. With regards to your business or your government office or your if you're in the police service or whatever, you know, you can't reveal nothing to the public. But then at the same time, now to solve crime, what do we need? We need the public to speak out, right? But we don't practice on any level when to speak out. So now to get the public to speak out, which, listen, it's not about them doing the police's job for them. Literally, that's what is needed.
And again, as a media ambassador, we've always come out and said our hands are not the cleanest. We've always come out and said that, yes, we have issues in the TTPS. So that's why we come to the media and say, well, look, we want to explain this. We want to explain that. Mm-hmm. And one of the things we want to explain to their avenues, we understand they are corrupt police officers, like any other society and like any other organization. But we are asking members of the public to listen, utilize the avenues, especially the confidential ones, to bring that information to us.
But I think I want to go back to a point that you just recently made, where if you see constant gang activity, it's not because the police aren't doing anything about it.
No.
And I feel as though we kind of take it for granted. What we think we know is gang activity and how these things goes. And I've seen it on TV and I know exactly what's going on. And in my block and blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, each gang is technically different. Each situation is different.
Every situation.
Right? And there are certain details and circumstances with our crime situation that just makes it big. And we're not the only kind of small island state, small jurisdiction situation where you have these extra complications. America have their own unique complications that we don't have, but we have our own ones that we can't just say, well, it's just like that. It's not just like that. And I find that's both interesting and crazy that you're literally just going to have a criminal enterprise that says it doesn't matter how many of us you arrest, we're going to still sell drugs on this one block. Like, it's almost like if the gang lord is like, he reached the point now where, you know, he has drinks when he had at the station every day and he's stubbornly saying, I know you arrest some guy say, I don't care, I still doing it. Like, you know, when a fella gets like so stubborn, all reason goes out the door.
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the things I noticed about that particular block is that they lime a lot. So they have a lot of drinks and, you know, food. And so apparently it's a small block, but nonetheless, they just want to take the money that they're making, I guess, and lime and party. And
that's the other problem, right? Like, there are levels to this whole drug
levels,
things. And
it has some people doing it just to make ends meet.
Right.
Some people do it to buy food. It has some people doing it to buy drinks. It have people doing the party, you know. But it have different levels. It have the extortion levels. It have the killing levels. It have whatnot.
I mean, one of the more interesting things that I have been taught and told recently is that we have quite a lot of local films on this subject matter.
Yeah.
And a lot of the actors in these local films are actual authentic to the lifestyle.
Yeah.
And some of the more famous films, the actors of those films, they are no longer alive.
No, correct.
Right?
Yeah.
But if you consider the fact that, this is a peek behind the curtain, and you kind of look at, what are they doing? What are they doing with the money that they steal?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, some of these guys, this is not the highest level of criminal mastermind here. This is, I steal money, I sell drugs, I buy alcohol, you know, the house ain't that great, you know, the clothes ain't that great.
The mattress on the ground is not that great.
It is literally just, I live life day to day, and if I die tomorrow, so be it. And it's like, that's not that easy to interdict.
Yeah.
There's no dependence, there's no trail, there's nothing to like anchor them to a point.
So what we have to do, I hear the caller talk about what the AG would have mentioned and whatnot. And one of the things we have to do as a organization is to get, now we are currently using all resources available to deal with the crime situation and of course the gangs. But one of the things we have to do is we have to gear society and gear our laws towards, as I said, outright banning and fighting the gangs. Because when you look, the reason for the ultimate reason for the high murder rate is gang activity. It's not the domestic violence murders.
Yes.
It's not the disputes.
Yes.
You know, it's not the neighbor, whatnot. That is in the minority. A neighbor might follow a neighbor and chop a neighbor and kill a neighbor and whatnot.
Yeah.
That's very minute. Well, in the minority. Condolences to those families.
Still grave and serious.
Still grave and serious.
But statistically, it's not a thing that you could spend 50% of police resources to try to stop.
Right. So you have to holistically address crime, medical reasons, societal issues, welfare issues, whatever. Holistically deal with crime. So you have to come at crime not just from a law enforcement perspective, but law enforcement perspective must include all avenues of fighting crime. So if it is that we have a number of youths in a community that aren't getting their driver's permit in a timely manner because they can't afford it, then we as the TTPS, when we come into that community, we must be able to afford them that opportunity by involving licensing departments. So this is where the holistic approach is entailed. And when you go into that community holistically, that is one avenue, that is a strategic avenue to fight crime. However, when it comes to the gangs, we also must align, strategize, and to infiltrate, trade them and deal with it. All our motivation must be against crime in such a way that all the laws are geared towards fighting that organized crime, that gang activity.
You see, it goes back to what I started the show with that lady that was held against her will. I was like, hey, this is not a police issue, right? Because apparently he reported it, the police didn't get help for a while. Is when the commissioner got wind of it because the Red Cross said something about it and stuff happened, right? But my thing is, it can't just be a police issue. It has to be a societal issue. Because other people knew, right? And it comes back down to what you're saying. It's like, look, if you want this thing solved and you know something, if you don't report it, you can't take it for granted that someone else will report it. Say when power goes out. Now, where I live, throughout my life, when power went out and you wait for it to come back. But when I was in Tobago, power goes out. I'm like, hey, call TNTech. I have to call TNTech?
Yeah.
I never had to do that before because in my community, somebody else would have called TNTech. Whenever I'm home and I call TNTech, it's like, yeah, we have a report already.
Yeah, it's called like bystander syndrome, basically.
Right? But when I was in Tobago, where I was, it's like, no, I have to call.
Somebody else will do.
In Trinidad, I never had an example of that like in my day-to-day life in Tobago. So now with reporting it on with regards to the gangs, yes.
Maybe he landed here totally by coincidence. But if by chance he's admiring your fresh coat of Benjamin Moore soft sky blue, well, that's a pretty high compliment. Coming from an expert.
Hi, I am Emiliana Beechan and I am a mental health and conflict resolution consultant. Welcome to Mind Matters, the show where we explore the intricate world of mental health and the art of conflict resolution. Join us as we hear from mental health professionals, conflict resolution experts, and everyday people who have transformed their lives through understanding and communication. Mind Matters, WESN Content Capital.
Are you driven, ambitious, and ready to earn? WESN, the Content Capital, is expanding, and we're looking for dynamic media sales executives to join our team. Sell powerful advertising solutions across television, digital, and social media platforms, and help brands tell their story. If you have strong communication skills, a passion for sales, and the drive to succeed, join WESN today. Send your CV to marketing@wsncc.com or WhatsApp 68-61662 and start building your future.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
This is 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson. The distance from where we should be in the world in going forward on our commitments with climate change.
The effects of climate change that cannot be accounted for. It's called loss and damage. And we're seeing loss and damage happening so much more in this decade and the previous decade.
The principal term there was this question of the correspondent banking issues.
That is why we're trying to build capacity with this country here, Trinidad and Tobago, and other countries in the region.
Man is not showing any signs of stopping or even slowing down. More than half of the forest in Trinidad is already gone.
All the plants and all the animals and all of the nice clean water and fresh air and everything had to be on this planet for humanity to have a chance.
We have small change when it comes to countries that can take decisions, and when they speak, the world listens.
The General Assembly is a very democratic forum. And Trinidad and Tobago has the same vote as Canada, in spite of the obvious difference in size.
And we're back here on Talk One on WSN. We had to take a quick break. However, we're wrapping up the show. We still have to wrap up the conversation with ASP Arun, but I do want to acknowledge the comment that we have. First, crime is a consequence of the conflict between common law and commercial law. Evidently, all crimes are commercial. Now, I agree with the statement. I had to look it up because I actually never necessarily heard this before. And why it references common law versus commercial law is very interesting. Common law being more principled, commercial law being more free to allow business to conduct itself. And there are wider implications down the line with that last part, right? Particularly with our society where we do have, ironically, ease of doing business. So you might say, well, Sean, what do you mean? We have ease of doing issues, problems. What about commercial law is freer or freeing up here? But I guess on some level, things like certain aspects of the law to allow business to function in the modern world, it does potentially come into conflict with hard common law precedents and principles, right? And then on top of that, to whatever degree that profit motivations leads to corruption and the like, and it's a long journey to then get to how this can be a factor, and probably is a factor, with gang activity and violent crime, because the economic situations that lead people to go down a life of crime, I believe that is basically what this comment is potentially leading us down to, right? And it's describing potentially part of the process of how things got bad economically. But we don't have time for that. ASP Arun, yeah, you wanted to close off on a point of just the need of helping the police with regards to legislation, which is something that I've said to before.
So, again, so when we look at the crime, the gang activities and dismantling gangs and whatnot, we recognize that there are more laws needed to address those. As I said before, there are laws concerning, we use the term snitching, where it is that, I guess it's whistleblower
well, I think legally you would have separate laws because those are separate situations.
Right, so, but we definitely need laws geared towards dismantling and addressing gangs directly. So yes, we have gang legislation, we have some gang legislation. It's pretty nice, right, in terms of helping law enforcement, but you definitely need more laws to directly affect gangs. And as I said, of course, the word snitching, when we use the word snitching, those type of laws, and then you have, there are different laws that could assist members of the public and the law enforcement to really tackle those criminal issues in terms of obtaining warrants, in terms of conducting investigations, in terms of bringing persons before the court. So those type of laws are really needed. And again, we are using all available resources. The other point I really want to make is that, again, if anybody has any information, whether it be against police officers or anybody member of Trinidad and Tobago, please provide it through the confidential avenues you have, including the Police Complaints Authority. So you have 555, you have 800 tips. And we want to see more information coming so we could build these cases and build these files against those alleged perpetrators.
Now, I'll just say this. I will somewhat agree with the caller not that I'm seeing the light at the end of the tunnel,
Yeah.
but you're seeing circumstances change
Yeah.
that could potentially improve the situation.
Yeah, we can. I mean, the TTPS is not hiding to say that we don't have bad apples, but we want to go after those bad apples with the correct information.
But and we said this last week. We speak on this last week. I think it's a good sign that you're seeing the government, the police use PDOs, right, to detain police officers. Also, the Americans are still operating. Granted, not as many airstrikes as before. I'm not necessarily saying that the airstrikes are the best way to do it, but the point is you're seeing some amount of foreign intervention in the transnational side.
Yeah.
So if you have the transnational side where all the big money now, which is making it harder to deal with the situation, that's being affected somehow. We don't know to what extent. And then now you see police officers that might be involved, that might be corrupt, they're being affected. That is two of the big levers that undermine the system. And if that and other things could get fixed, then all of a sudden the system has a better chance of being fixed. But I think one of the things that we might be underestimating as members of the public and don't fully appreciate is the fact that the sheer volume, you mentioned the sheer volume of crimes in the court, the sheer volume of the criminal system that the criminal justice system has to deal with, that's partially what makes it difficult because there's only so many police officers. Like, look, if they're going to keep going on this one block, then that unit literally on some level cannot then go to another block. They have to come back to the same block, right, to deal with the same thing over and over again. And it's stuff like that that also is limiting our ability to deal with crime. And we just need to kind of be patient with the police when it comes to those factors. Because what are you going to do? The whole point, you're already arrested and cleaned up the area. And they're like, we don't care. We're coming back anyway. All right. Chris, thanks for joining me once again.
Thanks,
Good to see you in good health. Thanks to the caller. Thanks to the commenters that we had for the show today. This is talking about the WESN, so we have to close now. So I want to remind everybody to stay safe. Remember your allegiance to the Republic and to each other. Stay safe on the roads these days. School is open or not. You know, somebody parked their car on the corner of the Savannah. And luckily, yes, on a morning. And I'm just thinking what rush hour traffic, if the car is still there, what that would have done. Because, you know, at 7:30 is a lot different than 7:55 or 8 o'clock. So hopefully nobody got damaged, right? And didn't cause a traffic jam.
And feel free in members of the public, if you have cases like you just explained there, and you notice that information, that situation, feel free to call the station and they would provide a record, they would send a record to wreck the vehicle.
I think the problem is bystander syndrome because I myself, I'm driving, right? Like, it's not like I could, you know, I'm on the Savannah, I'm not going to dial the police while I'm driving.
You're no police, sure.
I know, but still, it's a phone call. I'm telling you now, right? I'm on my way to work. That's the problem, right? Or it's a Friday night. So, I mean, and I'm on my way somewhere. Like, it's just one of those things where bystander syndrome, you know, I am part of that problem. I'm just saying why. You know, it's hard to, when you're bending a corner, it's hard to say, I'm going to take up my phone and call somebody.
These things could cause severe injuries and accidents. Call the station.
Just before I close, the reason why I just want to spend 2 minutes on this, they didn't just park on the corner, like say close to the entrance, Savannah. It was close to the corner. And even though there was not much traffic, I'm so not expecting it. I'm not driving in a way, because I was in the right lane. I'm not driving in a way to ensure I have space to avoid this car.
And then that location, you really definitely mightn't have space. I know
because it's a barrier. So I can't even kind of like pull out and hope the other guy could pull out.
But members of the public, feel free, call the station and complain so that we could send somebody to deal with the situation. We'll send a patrol.
Wrecking a car there would be very, very interesting as well. But hey, we had to go. So stay safe. Try not to hit parked cars that are parked incorrectly. It's a hell of a thing to say, you know, try and look ahead. I don't know how safe that is either. We will see you tomorrow. Let's all be nice. Bye-bye.
WESN.
Hello, everybody. This is 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson. Welcome to the program here on WESN. We have an exciting edition of the program this morning. We'll be talking in the second set of discussions with someone, Mr. David Mohammed.